Hello, listeners. Kathy Lawless, Life Story Curator, bringing you this podcast series, How Did I Get Here? A series of interviews designed for people who are just starting out, in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, and giving them access to stories of people who have been there, done that, so that they might be inspired with some new ideas, or maybe just comforted in knowing that they're not alone, that everybody starts somewhere, everybody goes through periods of being in transition or being stuck. Today, I'm very excited to be interviewing David Blaha. Hello, David.
Hey, Kathy, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us today. And David is currently in transition, as we kind of talked about. So this should be an interesting discussion for listeners. But he is a former executive at American Express, and he's now pursuing a variety of entrepreneurial and consulting ventures. So we'll hear about his story and how he got into the whole corporate ranks, but then also about what he's doing today. So very excited to get into things. So
thank you, Kathy.
But listeners, as you know, I always like to start with my icebreaker questions. And David, this is the icebreakers are all about getting to know you a little bit as a person. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with us where you grew up, what part of the country, how many siblings you had, where you were in the birth order, and how you think kind of that growing up experience influenced you as a person.
No. Well, Kathy, I actually lived in a number of places as a kid. My dad started off in the military, and then after the military moved into a number of different roles in the corporate space. But we was born up in the area of Ohio, Pittsburgh area, in a little town called Wheeling, West Virginia, and then lived in Ohio, moved to Massachusetts. But most of my upbringing took place in a little town in North Carolina called Reedsville. And so I went to school in Reedsville in high school, and then went to college in the state of North Carolina. And I've been in Atlanta now for about, I'd say about 25 years. So I've probably been in Atlanta longer than I've been anywhere else.
Uh-huh.
You ask about birth order. There's two of us. I have an older sister that's 5 years older. So that makes me the baby in the family. I don't know. I don't know how that influences things. It's funny. I talked to my sister this morning, FaceTime my dad yesterday. We're a very close family, and we talk all the time. So lots of love and support, and just excellent parental experience and family and values. So had a great experience growing up in a great little town, Reedsville.
Cool. And so kind of a small town environment you grew up in. Did you play sports, or were you into music or other activities?
I'd say all of the above. Little town like that, played a lot of different sports all the way through school, and always had interest in music. Always listened to a lot of music and dabbled with the guitar a little bit. I'm a drummer. I wouldn't say I'm a good drummer. I've got a kit still here in the house, and we'll play every now and then. But yeah, our town was probably about 10, 12,000 kids. And actually, I wrote an article this past week on LinkedIn about what's going on in our world right now and some of the challenges and culture and racism and everything else. And I mentioned Reedsville quite a bit in that article just because of my experience growing up in a really diverse town and a really diverse high school. But that was my experience in Reedsville.
So it sounds like we need to add writer to your list of things that you're pursuing.
Oh, absolutely. I've published a few articles over the last few months, and working on a book in the background. So I absolutely love to write. It's a labor, I'll tell you. There's sort of first draft that comes out really quick and really easy for me. And then there's a whole lot of editing and a whole lot of tweaking and a whole lot of making sure that it flows and says what I'm trying to say and what's on my heart. So, I absolutely love it. It's a great platform to be able to talk about things that I'm interested in these days, particularly things, related to culture and teaching and development of people and leadership and some of the things that I do some consulting around and work around. So, I find it to be quite invigorating.
Wow, that's cool. I find that writing is not a strength of mine. I'm more the verbal, so to do a podcast for me is more of interest than writing. So I admire those that have that ability to get it out of their brains and down on paper.
You know what's funny, Kathy, is I am an absolutely horrible speller, though. And fortunately, I have some people in my family, namely one of my sons, Billy, who I actually put all of my work in front of. And he reads for grammatical errors and spelling, and he's just excellent at it. So I have family that, provide some of the support to the areas that I'm not very good at.
That's awesome. Okay, so continuing with the icebreaker questions then, on a fun meter, on a scale of 1 to 5, where would you put yourself? 1 being a couch potato and 5 being the life of the party.
That's a hard question to answer because I think everybody wants to say that there's something maybe, different than what they are. But I will tell you, I think people that know me well enough, and hopefully this in no way comes across as boastful, I'm pretty strong towards, that high 4, 5. I am not a couch potato. My wife will tell you that I have restless, boundless energy, and anybody that's ever worked with me would say the same thing too. So if I'm in your town and I'm your leader, we're going to see clients, we're going to have town halls, do all that stuff during the day, and then we're going to have a great dinner, and then we're going to go out for the after dinner. And if it ends around 2 a.m., that's perfectly fine for me. So
Oh man.
I tend to run hard, and yeah, I don't like the couch. When I get on the couch, I immediately fall asleep because I'm obviously very tired at that point.
Yes. So the couch is for sleeping, not for living.
Yeah, I'm just not much of a sitter. I never have been. What's interesting is probably if I was real young right now, and then I might be on some type of medicine for hyper activity. But what I've found is if I can channel that energy into things, it really works for my advantage. And I think the types of things that I'd like to do when I'm not working, I'm a mountain biker, ride motocross, big time skier, so activities and those things that, bring a lot of energy. Yeah. The more of that, the better.
Okay. Well, it's funny. The answers to these questions really come out, as we get through your story. You really start to see how all of these things play out. It's been fun for me to do these icebreakers and get that sense of, knowing that going in, and seeing the energy then continue to show up, and the fun factor. Okay, so on a different scale, the risk-taking scale, same scale, 1 to 5, where do you put yourself?
It's interesting. I would probably say a little on the lower end when it comes to financial decisions. I tend to make decisions off of data and off of input. I'm very much a seeker of counsel on any critical decision. So whether that be investment or the purchase of something or even business decisions, more collaborative type thinking to arrive at decisions. So I would probably be middle, maybe 2.5, if that's, such a thing on the risk from that standpoint. But then people that know me on my play side, and like I said, when you look at the kinds of things that I love to do, whether it be mountain biking or skiing or whatever, the risk level goes much higher. So, people said like, you always seem like you're looking for your next way to hurt yourself.
Well, it is funny. Most people do describe it in 2 ways, kind of their business side or their professional side and their personal, or they describe it in that, I'm not an adrenaline junkie, but I do take risks in business, or vice versa. It's very, very interesting how they break it out and where the risks end up being, whether
Absolutely.
It's on the adrenaline side or on the professional side. So cool. Well, David, tell us a little bit about your role at American Express. So that kind of gives us a sense of what you accomplished in your career, and then tell us a little bit about what you're looking for now. So just give us a summary there.
Yeah. So at American Express, I joined really right after college. I had a couple of other jobs that lasted for a few months, and entry level sales type roles. But I joined American Express. And what's interesting is I had been a ski instructor in college for a couple of years, and my plan was to move out west, to go to Aspen or Vail, work on the mountain as a ski instructor and do other things, and sort of launch my life from there. But as I was working to save some money for that move, a buddy of mine called me, good friend Tom called me, and they were hiring at American Express part-time, second shift, temporary jobs that were sort of telesales roles. Now, this was over 25 years ago, so this was calling card members who had canceled their card and trying to talk them into coming back. And that was the beginning of my journey at American Express. So I didn't start at a auspicious level. I started entry level, part-time temp, in the door, a few dollars an hour. And after a few months of this, I was really doing well. And they asked me to, put down my headset and actually coach and help recruit and hire and develop, the newer folks that we were bringing in, because this department was growing. We were doing really well. And really the whole telesales channels, 1-800, numbers, 1-800, the card, those things were really just taking off then. And I was doing well at it. And the people I was coaching and teaching were doing well. And, my career just grew from there. So I was in an operations center environment in Greensboro, North Carolina. And before long, I had a few hundred people, that were on the phones, and I was, supervisor, manager level, service delivery leader. I was, rising up the ranks and in a couple of high potential management development programs that were quite exciting. And I got some great exposure and experiences. And, that ultimately led me to a move to Atlanta. And when I came to Atlanta, at that point, I was working in what was our Southeast. I moved out of the consumer business into our corporate business. And now for the first time, we're really running sales teams and account teams of people that were out in the field in front of customers. And I was starting to travel, and, my career just continued to grow.
Yeah.
So at the time, over the period of years I worked at Amex, Kathy, which was really an amazing experience. I had the chance to work in so many different areas of the business. And I had a goal to continue to grow my experience so that I could truly be, a general manager, and a general manager where, ultimately I could run, an organization, whether that be an organization as part of Amex or some other company or my own organization. So, I worked in product development roles, marketing roles, account management, sales, so really diverse experiences across a really large company. International experience and domestic, consumer, corporate. And so I navigated my career through a number of different places within Amex. And Amex was such a big organization that, if you change divisions or you change groups or business units or change disciplines, from say, sales or account development to a marketing or a product development kind of role, or even an operations role in finance. I did all those things. It was almost like starting over, a brand new experience within a brand new company. With a brand new acumen that you could develop.
Yeah.
So,
well, how many years were you with them?
Right at about 30, almost 30 years.
Wow.
But, started, like I said, right out of school. So when I left, I was, about a year ago, still, by my standards, still a young guy with a lot of runway ahead of me. And so, yeah, when I left, I was general manager of our large market group. So basically, I had teams across a big piece of the country that were managing, really, some of our bigger corporate relationships for the company, and in the $20 billion range of sales. So really big business with a really big P&L, with great leadership and exposure. So that's what I was doing when I left.
Wow. Well, that is a great run. And so it's interesting that your goal was to experience so many different areas so you could be a general manager, and then you ended up general manager. So you were very purposeful in that way.
Yeah, very purposeful. What was interesting for me was, when I got to that point and had the opportunity to, like I said, do so many different things, and what a great blessing the company was, and great leadership. I mean, there's a book in me on just pure leadership, and there's so many leaders that I cite along the way that had impact on me and my growth in my career. But there was still this itch, within inside of me to do something on my own. And I don't know if that ultimately means I end up, truly working as a sole entrepreneur on my own, or if that means that I work with a group of partners. And I've got a couple of different groups of individuals that I'm working with and exploring opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities. Or if I get the call at some point from a former leader or someone that is running an organization that says, hey, David, we'd love to have you come be our, number one or number two, or help us really launch this thing and run our revenue and our business. So at this stage, I'm pretty wide open to doing a number of different things. And like we talked about, whether it's writing or consulting or all those things that I'm doing today, we'll see. And maybe that's why, as you introduced me, transition probably is the right word, because I'm transitioning into that next phase of what I'm going to be doing. But with that, as I think about that transition, that process, I'm pretty excited about the what's next. I'm excited about having the opportunity to have learned what I've learned and now apply that to some things that really matter to me. Matter to my values, matter to what I want to do and what I will accomplish, and how I believe I can, have significant impact in that next chapter.
Yeah. So, you described yourself earlier as having boundless, restless, that you were restless and boundless energy. So when you were in at American Express and kind of moving into these different areas, did you get restless in the different areas? I mean, it sounded like it was exciting to get in and get started. You said it was like starting over each time. And then you reached a point where you're like, okay, now I'm on to something else. I mean, what was kind of your time frame for moving on?
I think that's a great question. And that's probably a question for the listeners that I would pose for anyone out there. And you sort of know when you hit that mark where, you've got to be in a place where I think you have to be in a place where you're continually learning and being challenged. When it starts to get easy, that could be good. I mean, there's a comfort level to, okay, I've got this thing figured out. Now it's easy. And even if I'm working a lot of hours, there's no real surprises, because I really understand this role. I understand all the sort of nuances that can come. I've got contingency in place for whatever. Whenever you get to that place, it's probably time to make a move. And at Amex, I had the opportunity to do that. So I had the chance to move to a number of different leaders in different parts of the business. One of the challenges for me, like a lot of folks, you get to a certain level, and I was, rising to a pretty senior level at Amex. I'm here in Atlanta. New York is where American Express is headquartered. I really had not planned, and that wasn't part of our, goal to make that move to New York, especially now with a daughter still in high school. And so, I think, one of the things you have to pay close attention to is, where can you go? How far can you go? And how much can you continue to be challenged? So, that boundless energy thing, I think shows up, but I think it shows up for everyone. And that's probably the question you have to ask yourself is, if I'm in a role that I now have mastered and I'm not learning, it's time to move on. Because I think we're at our best and our greatest when we're excited about a challenge ahead. When you're doing something you don't know how to do is when you're growing. And although it might be uncomfortable, that's when we have our most fun. You think about your experiences in your life when you go back and remember something that you were learning how to do the first time you did it, right? And how exciting that was. But then after you've done it 100 times, okay, it's still fun, perhaps. And I'm even talking about hobbies or whatever. But is it exciting? And the answer might be no. So I think there should be excitement in what you're doing.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't know. It was 2-3 years. Once I was in something, started to figure out, I was ready for what was next.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate you sharing that. One of my other interviewers talked about that leaders have a shelf life. And sometimes you have to figure out what that shelf life is. And I think that's what you're describing here, is that when you're no longer learning and growing, are you really contributing to your team? Are you at your highest? Are you at your peak is what it sounds like you're describing. And so if you're not, then it was about, okay, well, let me go to another area. And, 2 to 3 years is still a considerable investment in an area, that you can get in, learn the people, learn the processes, the things, make a difference. And then, but also then be responsible for the consequences of those decisions too, right? Because if you only stay 8 to 12 months or 18, sometimes then you don't have the consequences of the decisions.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
But that also, I think, frees you from making decisions that are the wrong decisions for the wrong reasons, because you do make you do make decisions that are going to change things. You're not as connected to the, well, I've been doing this for 5 years and I know how it works and I've got it nailed. And if we go do that, that could change the dynamic. Well, perhaps the dynamic has to be changed. So, and I think that's why often when you hire, fresh, newer, folks from outside an organization, there's a desire to always, not everyone, but you want to have some percentage of newer people coming into your organization because they bring new, fresh ideas.
Yep.
And I think for the people that are within the organization, same thing should apply. Don't work hard to find opportunities for your people to move and grow, because through that, they're your best resource. So through that, they'll bring your best ideas. Yeah. Plus, they already have some experience, but now they're in a new area, a different product. And they can think of, okay, here's culturally how we work, but over here, there's an opportunity that perhaps the folks closest to it are not seeing.
Yeah. Well, and there's also good experience in being the new person again for the first time, not always being the most senior person in the room, and learning something new. Like you said, there's that, there's a humbleness to it, right? And there's that asking of questions. I see the value there. Totally. Well, and I think a lot of corporations, one of their, or the successful corporations are the ones that are moving people around and creating, leadership programs, or I guess they would be just development programs of their people, and giving them those opportunities and valuing the chance to move around. So it sounds like you're in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I think so. I think their God had a plan for me, and I was in the right place, and I couldn't have been more excited how my career moved at American Express.
So what did you were talking about, you wanted to move out and be, in the ski industry and all of that. But so when you were in junior high school, what did you want to be when you grew up? Was it a ski instructor, or were you thinking, oh, I'm going to be general manager one day of American Express?
Oh gosh, no, I wasn't thinking about American Express, and I was probably thinking about a lot of things that kids of the junior high school age are thinking about. Go to college, get a degree, be successful at something. And it's interesting, that question, because we're figuring that out with our daughter right now as she's a rising senior in high school. It's sort of the what's next, what school, what career. But no, at that point in time, Kathy, all I wanted to do was just graduate high school and get into college. I knew some form of business was interesting to me. So even as I had interest in, recreational things like skiing, my thought was always to be in that industry, or working in the industry that is close to the things that I really care about, where I can make a difference, but also from a business standpoint. So, I've always had pretty strong math skills, and, comfortable in communication. And I always believed that the opportunity to run a business or run an organization would be something that would be quite interesting and quite fun. I love people. I get motivated by being around, and the energy that comes from being with a group of people. So that chance to lead a team organization was definitely something that I was thinking about. American Express. I don't know if I'd even heard of American Express at that point in my life, but life sort of finds a way.
Yeah. So what did you get at your college degree? What degrees do you have?
So I went to Appalachian State University, which is in Boone, North Carolina. So it's in the mountains of North Carolina. And, most people don't realize there is skiing in North Carolina. They're not giant mountains, but my older sister had gone to school there, and I had visited her a number of times. And at the time that I went to school, I was thinking about accounting, and App State had a great accounting program. And so I was like, okay, I can study accounting, go into business, get an accounting degree. And I also was thinking about like a dual major in some form of computer science, because I just thought from the perspective of, if I really understand computers. Now, remember, this is 30 years ago. If I really understand computers, so these computers were quite different than what you have sitting on your desk in front of you right now, or perhaps the computing power of that giant IBM mainframe compared to your phone. It probably has, about 100th of the processing power at best, maybe even less. But anyway, that's what I wanted to study at App State. And I had some friends that went there since I'd been going up to visit my sister quite a bit, and they had a few ski mountains too. So this was okay, work on the mountains, ski some, get this degree in accounting and another degree in computer science. And that's what I wanted to do. But once I got there, I realized I'm not an accountant. Bless the people out there that are. So that became something that I was not as interested in. So I studied management and marketing. So I got a dual degree in management and marketing.
Yeah, when you first said accounting, I was like, whoa, that seems like it didn't fit with your boundless energy. And I'm not that accountants can't have energy, but it just feels like you're more on the people side of the business and the leadership side, not in the detailed, recording of the transactions, etc. But when you're young, you don't know these things, right?
Yeah, you don't know. And I think that's part of it. I think sometimes where kids have to make the decision in high school of what they want to be when they grow up, and then pick a lane. At that point in time, I don't think there were nearly as many assessment type assessment work and tools that we have today, that we could measure our aptitude and capabilities and temperaments and all those other things. So I think if I would have gone through a number of those at that point in time, I probably would have figured out very quickly that accounting wasn't something that was necessarily my best fit. And what's interesting, Kathy, is I have a lot of friends that are accountants and that are CPAs, or that are folks that are CFOs and treasurers, because my last several jobs, I was running our large market corporate business up and down the East Coast, and I was dealing with very large companies, and my customers that I would visit and see on a regular basis were the controllers, the treasurers, and the CFOs of these giant companies, and it takes all type. It takes people that really understand rules and processes. It takes people that understand creative ways to finance a business. It takes people that understand, the technology and the infrastructure that has to support it. And all those, I think, it's not just the education. Often the people that rise to the top in those places, have the temperaments and the skill sets. So that's another thing I would say to anyone listening, is that when you think about what you're doing, does it really match to what you are skilled at? And I don't mean that I know how to do it, or I got education or have background or education on it. It's more of does this fit? Does this fit my temperament and how I think about things and how I see things and how I process? If you're in a role that requires tremendous, people and communication, but you really struggle to be around large groups of people on a regular basis, then you probably go home at the end of the day and you're exhausted. Yeah. So, find that thing or those things that really line up with what you value and how you're, what is your operating system? Like I said, back in school, I figured out pretty quickly accounting. No, that wasn't mine.
But part of that is you have to figure it out on your own anyway, right? You have to be the one kind of, making that decision and saying, okay, I thought it was this, and then it's not. And now I think it's this, and yeah, this is feeling better. And then trusting your gut on that.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about if you've had any setbacks over the years. It sounds like, this was a really great run at American Express, but were there times when you were, or maybe the times are now, when you're really, struggling with, I don't know what's next. I don't know that obvious next move, and I'm feeling a little scratchy.
Yeah, I think if there's anybody out there that tells you they've never had a setback, good for them. I haven't encountered that individual, and I certainly am not that individual. Before I left Amex, one of the things I was doing, I had a couple of great projects I was working on. One of them, I was paired up with Harvard University, and we were doing a cohort sponsor kind of program for leadership, and I was able to. I was a cohort executive sponsor, with a couple of folks from Harvard, and we would lead leadership discussions with, groups of 200, 300, 400 people and video calls. And I love doing that. And, and as part of sharing your journey and the things that you dealt with. And there was another program I was involved in called Ready to Lead. And in the Ready to Lead program, we were taking, people that were high potentials that were, wanted to get to that people leadership role. And I remember, in one of those, video presentations, there was a chart, of the sort of journey of David. And And I had seen some other folks that had gone before me and how they had done their chart, and I drew my chart in such a way that, there was a lot of up and down. There was a take this role, okay, that didn't work so well, go to that role. Take this role, okay, move sideways over here. Take this. So it's not always up and to the right, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's a good thing. Sometimes you have to take chances, and sometimes you have to move into roles that give you experience or challenge you, like we were talking about earlier, that I believe prepare you for the longer term. There's some skills that you have to build along the way that will serve you. I wanted to be a general manager. I might not like, product development. I might not like operations. I might not like parts of finance. I might not like sales, whatever. But if I was going to be a general manager and all those things, I like at different, different levels. But if I'm going to get there, I have to go through this process of picking up and checking off these different skill sets and understandings, because that's going to prepare me to really see the business more broadly, and it's going to help my decision making. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I definitely made some decisions along the way that I look back on and go, God, if I wouldn't have taken that and I would have gone over there, because there were times where I was offered 2 jobs. We went through a restructure, or there was an opportunity where there were 2 different roles and 2 different leaders that had approached me to perhaps pursue their job, and I went one way and maybe I should have gone the other, looking back on it. But truthfully, I spend very little time there thinking that way, Kathy, and I would just urge anyone that it's have a windshield mentality, not a rear view mirror mentality. There's stuff to learn from the past, and we need to pay attention to it. But when I'm around people or myself, if I start to get too much, or too hung up on how something happened or was done, or mistake that was made and how much it hurt me, that does me no good. I've got to look forward. Yeah. And so yeah, steps along the way, but I learned from them.
Yeah.
And
well, I get when you have that higher goal of becoming a general manager, then all these things do look like steps along the way, even though maybe at the time it didn't feel like, okay, I just got to take this step and I'll be good. When I think back on my career in corporate, I don't know that I had that ultimate goal of general manager that, I need to experience all of these areas. I was more about, well, is this area a fit? Is this area a fit? What do I want to be doing? And in the beginning, I think I was, just on the train where I just kept getting offered things and I just kept saying yes. And then I reached a point where you mentioned it, you get to kind of a senior level. And then now you have to be very purposeful. What do I really want to work on? Where are my gifts? Where do I want to add the most value? So,
absolutely.
But I don't know that I looked at it as, I have all these steps. I'm in operations. Now I'm in client services. Now I'm in project. It wasn't as purposeful. So I appreciate that perspective now, because now I'm looking back on my life going, or my career going, what, well, I know what those steps were, but what did they give me? They gave me a lot of that perspective.
Sometimes I think people, Kathy, want to grow, and sometimes the belief of growth means bigger job, more money, right? Yeah. Promotion, more money, just, whatever the next, and the next is always got to be up. And I would counsel, people all the time on the sideways. I'd sometimes counsel on the sideways down, but that was more if there was a performance issue or something that maybe they just needed to do something different. And in order to reset, they might have to take a step in the direction they wouldn't want to take. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, one way or the other, they were going to have to make a move. But sometimes the sideways, there's great, I made a sideways at one point in my career. I was in this corporate business, it was business travel. It was international. It was a really cool role. And I had a team, and there was a director of sales role that was an individual contributor. So, I've been leading people for, 15 years, and I was going to take a role where I now was going to be a senior salesperson, but with no team in a different division. But it was a division that was, getting funded to launch some new products. They needed somebody who could operate, with very large clients. We were actually working with competitors. We had to establish things. And I went over there as a director, and within a year or two, I was promoted to a vice president role, hired a whole sales organization, was running business across all of North America. And, it was one of the cooler times in my career, but I would have never got there if I didn't take that lateral job, because
Mm-hmm.
what I saw over there was an opportunity to pick up some acumen and experiences that I did not have. And through that, man, it just invigorated my career. But you have to be willing to take those chances sometimes, and and think longer term, bigger picture versus, ooh, there's a promotion right here.
Yeah.
And, I can make a few thousand more dollars, or I could make this move over here. Could be really strategic for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the perspective that you gain by stepping out of leadership sometimes. I did that several times in my career, where I was started in operations leading a team, then moved into the services side, which was like more frontline and working with sales. So you got that perspective, and then back into an individual contributor in, more a training and development role, then back into leadership. I mean, it was really interesting when I think back. Maybe I was more purposeful, but, there were those times where I was in leadership, and then I was an individual contributor, and then I was leading a team, et cetera. But each time you step into something new, yeah, you're challenged, and you bring the perspective of what where you've been, and an
Absolutely.
appreciation for all of those roles of where you've been too. I think, appreciation of, sales is not where I wanted to be, but I did like being on the front line, supporting sales directly and supporting clients directly.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. I got this real visual in my head when you talked about your chart and how it had ups and downs and sideways, and then it had, to give your role. So
Yep.
talk a little bit about what caused you to make a decision to leave this, because it sounds like you were in a very much a dream job, and now what's next?
Yeah. The decision to leave was a hard one. After being there for, like I said, for so many years, and as I look around my office today, my virtual office, when you're somewhere for that long, and you've led sales teams and organizations and products. So I've got a few different tables in my room that are just covered with some really good memorabilia and awards and certificates and all that kind of stuff. A few years ago, I was put in the American Express Hall of Fame, which was probably the thing I was most proud of in my career. And there's a handful of people that get put in the Hall of Fame every year, and it's a company of 66,000 employees,
Wow.
and only a few go in every year. And
Congratulations.
I was selected. No, thank you. I was selected for that, and it was about just a lifetime of work and a commitment. I was a very loyal American Express employee that really cared about my company and the culture of my company and the values and the people. And what's interesting, Kat, there's probably not a day that goes by, I've been gone for a year, that I don't speak to one or two people from Amex, just because the relationships were that deep for me. But about a year ago, we had gone through an organizational change, and which created some role changes, and my role was going to change a little bit. And part of that change was going to have me picking up some global business, and just a couple of other pieces to it, a new leader. And at that point in time, my daughter, coming up on her junior year in high school, my role required me to travel every week, not all week, but every week. And honestly, I was at this place where I felt, okay, if I'm ever gonna make a move, now's the time. And so I sat down with our chief revenue officer and had some really good discussions with him, and as well as my new leader. And, and I basically, let them know that I thought it was probably time. I had accomplished the things I wanted to accomplish. And if I was ever going to go out and do my own thing, or start my own business, or, do something very entrepreneurial, it would be now. And, and they, I think they were all surprised. No one expected it. And, an org announcement had already gone out with, and so there's a little bit of redacting. I don't know if that's the right word, that, but I cannot say how appreciative I was of the Amex team and my leadership and the support, and, in making that decision. And I think, and I there were a lot of pieces of me that didn't want to go, and I think there were pieces of the team that our leadership that obviously didn't want me to go. But like I said, they were very supportive that I wanted to chase my dreams. So I took 6 months off and did nothing but travel with my family. A great anniversary trip with my wife, and went to Tokyo with one of my sons, and went to Colorado spent some time with Bobby, my other son, and my daughter and I took some trips, and just really enjoyed a break. And I called it a gap year. It didn't really
I
turn out
love
to be
that.
a year, but I said, yeah, I said, I even wrote an article that I never published because I thought it might be offensive to younger folks that, really are taking gap years. And it was a little bit of making fun at, needing to take a gap year after college, life. But for me, I really needed some time, and I took it, and it was phenomenal. And it gave me the chance to, meet so many new people in different businesses and launch what's next. And what's next is a combination of things. I've got a few different partners that we're working on some entrepreneurial opportunities, a couple businesses we want to launch. I'm doing some work with some CEOs of startups where I'm helping them and strategizing on some of their revenue, where they want to take their business. I'm doing fun things like today, this podcast with you. Tonight, I'm speaking to, I think about 100 college kids. It was supposed to be in person, but now it's going to be Zoom. It's a big camp function, and I'm talking on leadership tonight. Tomorrow morning, I've got another thing that I'm working on, a presentation on leadership and culture development for a company. I'm writing. So what's interesting is, as opposed to having one thing to do in one role, one company, right now I've got, a calendar that's a menagerie of different activities that, line up in the areas, like I said, of consulting, teaching, leadership, writing, coaching, board work. There's a couple of board advisory opportunities that I'm exploring. But who knows, Kathy, I think the transition word's the right word, because a year from now, I may find myself back in a company. But if I end up back in a company, it's going to be in a role doing exactly what I want to do, leading a big team, driving business, making an impact, tied to an industry that I really value and some business that's really important to me. So yeah, that's why I made the move. It was a big risk. People like my father, who very disciplined, former military, like, are you crazy? You got this great job, and, you're just going to leave. Where are you going? I'm like, well, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to take some time, reset, and figure out what's next.
Yeah. Well, I still hear boundless energy in your voice when you talk about what's next. And it's like, next could be a portfolio career like you described. So instead of just one organization that you're contributing to, there's many that you can contribute to. So, wow, that's very
well. And like I said, I've got the opportunity to have that flexibility right now. Now, probably like a lot of people, COVID over the last 3 months has made it more challenging, because I was actually out of town when this happened. I was in Colorado visiting my son. The week before, I had been up in Charlotte looking at, some equipment for one of the businesses we were looking at, meeting with equipment manufacturers. And, it was hard to believe. And I was in Colorado meeting with a few other potential business partners, and a little bit of skiing with my son. And that's when COVID hit and the mountain shut down, and we figured out how to get back to Atlanta. But yeah, there's enormous opportunity out there and things to do that you can pursue. So a lot was happening. Things got a little quiet the last couple of months because you can't physically go see people like you could. But hopefully we'll break free in the fairly near future and get a few of those opportunities back off the ground.
Yeah. Hopefully it was just we're looking at a pause button here for a few months, and then we can get back to it. But
I hope so.
Back to it maybe in a more intentional way. I found one of the things for me is that there was a lot of things I was going down the path of, and it really caused me to reevaluate what was important. So I don't know. I feel like a lot of people are doing that. They're really pausing and reflecting on, well, what do I want to re-engage in now that things are starting to open up? So, well,
absolutely,
David, I could talk with you all all afternoon about, I have a variety of questions, but there's two questions that I'd like to get into. One is JC Heinen, who is the person who introduced us, talked about how you really manage or cultivate your network, and that you're very connected, but that is not an accident. It's been very purposeful. Can you talk a little bit about how you network or what that means to you and how you cultivate that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, it helps to have energy because that's a starting point. Now, I know not everyone operates the same way or who's operating systems the same way, um, but I 100% am a connector. But I do that through a lot of different mediums. And I think there's a little bit of a tickle in my brain that's always reminding, okay, who have I not talked to today? So if you look at my phone, you pick it up right now and I click on it and I just look at, okay, who have I texted with today? There's probably 30 some texts so far this morning of people that I've connected with prior to getting on the phone with you. And I was on LinkedIn this morning, and there was probably 3 or 4 or 5 more connections this morning that I made. And, part of writing and posting things, brings a certain amount of followership and connectivity. But I think it has to be purposeful. You have to look at your calendar, and you have to think about your day as, okay, it's David's, CEO of David, right? And Kathy's CEO of Kathy, and anyone else. You are your own business, you are your own entity, and so connections can be obviously for two purposes. One can be you just want to be connected to the people in your life or know people in your life that matter to you on a personal level, and then there's business connectivity too. But for me, I've always thought about the folks that I'm connected to in business or the folks that I'm connected to personally, there's a lot of merger for me in those individuals. I tend not to bucket, well, those are my customers, or those are my work friends, or these are my personal friends. If you're connected to me, you're a friend of mine, and that doesn't mean that every one of my, thousands of connections on LinkedIn or something, I know all those people at a personal level, but I think of it from the perspective of, they're friends. They're connected to me. I always thought of my customers as my friends. My work, folks, I never felt like, well, why can't we talk in the evening or over the weekend? Why can't you know about my family or what I'm into? Why can't we have a relationship that transcends beyond just business? So I think the starting point to this question is probably a little bit of just, where's your heart, in knowing and relating and connecting to people. What do you value? Where is your heart? And I think that's the first part. And the second part is, I think you just have to be intentional. Are you the friend that, if you haven't heard from someone in 6 months, that, at one point you called a pretty good friend, and, that you look at as, well, she hasn't called me, so I'm not calling her, or he hasn't reached out to me, so I'm not reaching out to him. Or are you the individual that says, God, I haven't heard from that person in several months. I need to drop them a note. I just need to, hey, what are you doing? I was thinking about you. So sometimes it's as simple as just going down my contact list and just literally going down that list and looking, okay, who have I messaged, not contact to, reached out to, that I just need to drop a note to. So I had a couple of those today, just like people that I was like, God, I haven't talked to that person in a while. They used to be on one of my teams. We used to have a great relationship. Why have I let that go? So I don't know, Kathy, I sort of rambled there a little bit, but I think a lot of it is just intent. And then with that intent, just leveraging the tools that are available to you. And there's so many tools now that make it so easy to remain connected in ways that you can remain connected. But I think it starts with being just intentional on operating that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a tech guy. So there's a lot of different social media platforms and group me platforms, and and I'm pretty I'm pretty proficient on utilizing the technology that's in front of me to maintain connectivity. But I don't know. I hope I answered your question.
Well, you did, and that was a great answer. I love that. I would put myself as a connector as well. I tend to do that same thing. All of a sudden, it'll hit me. Oh, wow! I haven't talked to Donna in months. I need to call her for a lunch or something. people just pop into your head, whether you see them on Facebook or LinkedIn, what have you. But it sounds like I love your thought about going through my contact list and go, well, who haven't I seen and who doesn't pop up regularly in my technology that I might need to reach out to? Because I got to tell you, when someone reaches out to me out of the blue, I love it. It feels great. It's like, yes, let's get together. So
and one other thing I was going to say, and do you do the little things? And when I say the little things, when the anniversaries pop up on LinkedIn or the Facebook, somebody's birthday pops up, or, just all those little things, somebody got promoted, somebody posted something, and, just messaging to them. I mean, those are pretty simple things. I know they're not as personal as a phone call or a face-to-face, but they do show, effort and an attempt to remain connected. So how do you leverage those simple things? And then the other thing is, I'm not a big TV watcher, and so I don't waste, and I'm not saying that's waste, to binge or whatever. I looked at COVID as an opportunity to not, watch 10 episodes of The Tiger King, which I'm sure is phenomenal. I did watch one just to see, okay, what is this? But who are all the people that I know are not traveling now, that it's impossible. It's always impossible to get them and for them to get me. Who are all the people I need to connect with? And just, and I'm going to leverage this time as an opportunity to have a lot of great conversations with people I haven't talked to in a long time.
Wow. Again, back to that boundless energy. Okay, last question. What do you think has served you best over the years? What trait or characteristic or maybe behavior or discipline or practice?
I think it's probably curiosity. I'm very curious. I love to get to know and understand things that I don't know and understand. I've always felt like I'm probably one of those individuals that I can get in a conversation with almost anyone about almost anything, and I can go about 2 questions deep. If you take me to the third or fourth question, then I'm a mile wide and an inch deep, and I don't know if that's good or bad. But I think it's curiosity. So when I meet someone that is a microbiologist or a botanist or a chemist or something that I'm not, I'm really curious to what they do, why they got into it, what they've learned from it, what the challenges are with it. So I think there's a curiosity to ask questions and to pry and to dig deeper. And hopefully I never ask those in an offensive way. In my article this week, it's about my experience growing up in a really diverse small town and working for a company that valued diversity and the leadership of our company. And so for the past, few weeks, as I was writing this article, I reached out to a number of my Black friends at work, and I call them friends at work, and my Black friends from my high school, and just ask them questions, and every now and then I ask it the wrong way, and I don't, but I'm not afraid to ask the question. And if I ask it the wrong way, I'm like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to say this the right way, but I'm just curious. Would you mind sharing your experience with this? Because I have a different experience because I'm not you. I didn't grow up as you. And it's interesting. What I have found is 99% of the time when you're curious, people appreciate it. I've enjoyed this conversation with you today, and you've asked all the questions, and I know it's structured that way, but I feel honored when you ask me a question. I think people generally do. They like when someone is curious about them. So I've always been curious. I've been curious about my leaders. I've been curious about their journeys. I've been curious about the people who worked for me or my peers. And hopefully that comes across, it's just genuine interest, because that's what it is. And through that, I learn. And I think that curiosity has given me great experiences and great understanding that help me make decisions, because now I'm not making them from my point of view and perspective. I'm making them from a whole lot of input and data.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's curiosity, and I think probably it comes back to that seek wise counsel as well. I've always before I make any important decision, I love to talk it through. I'm an outward processor. I make decisions through the conversation of what I'm making the decision on. And that can be sometimes frustrating because sometimes you just want the person to come in with a decision, but I want to talk it through with you. And then together we arrive at it. But I don't know, curiosity and I think through that, seeking counsel, are the things that have served me really well through my career.
Yeah.
And I think people, hopefully people, Kathy, have found me to be genuine through my career.
Yeah. Well, I think the two go together, the curiosity and the seeker of counsel, because then you're curious, but then you value what others have to say. Not just, I already have my mind made up and I know I'm supposed to do this seeking of counsel thing. So you're not just going through the motions. Yeah. So no, you sound very authentic and genuine in that approach. So, and led to your success. So, well, again, David, I could listen or talk with you all afternoon. So I just want to thank you for sharing your story today. Can you share with us how we can find your articles, how we can read some of your writing?
Yeah, 100%. Well, one, if you just look me up on LinkedIn, and it's pretty simple to find me on LinkedIn, David Blaha. There's some others, but I'm going to pull up my exact address, make sure I've got that correct here. So I'm going to my profile as I'm talking to you, and it is, it's linkedin.com, and then there's a /in/David David Blaha /. But I think it should be pretty easy to find me. So if you look me up on LinkedIn, all my articles are there. Okay. I also have a YouTube channel that I've launched, but I've not put my leadership videos on there yet, building the content there as well as my website. At this point, I've only been working really in these consulting and opportunities with people I know that just, have reached out. And so I haven't built up some of that connectivity that I know I need to. But LinkedIn's probably the easiest way to find me. And you can see my profile and background and experiences at American Express, and the articles that I've published to date are there.
Okay, great. All righty. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up now. So listeners, if you have any questions for David or for me or for future interviews, please, you can post them on my website, lifestorycurator.com. I would encourage you to please subscribe to the blog and to my podcast so that you're notified and alerted of podcasts as they come available. So, and on my blog, I will post, David's interview, as well as I'll post his LinkedIn. And then if there's any other social media that is available at the time that we publish, I'll post that there so you can find David. So again, David, thank you so much for sharing your story, and you stay safe, stay well, and have a great day.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you.